Good morning. At the outset, I would like to thank the Teaching Learning Center of Ramanujan College, University of Delhi, for inviting me to speak on the interdisciplinary 2-week online refresher course on the theme Feminist Teaching and Research in Higher Education, Theory and Practice. Uh, I would like to speak today on philosophy of education as a value and its use in times of crisis. The, the thing which needs to be explained right at the beginning itself is what do we mean by education and what are the various components of education, the basic questions which we find in the philosophy of education and the role of values into it. Education, as we understand in the academic world, is a process through which an individual gains knowledge or insight, develops attitudes or skills, attains perfection or wisdom. It is in the domain of education that we think, express ourselves, articulate our inspirations and anxieties, and decide the mode of life we wish to engage in. It is education, its ideals, symbols, and everyday practices, its rights, duties, and obligations that distinguishes us and defines our humanity. This is a very broad definition of education, and generally it has been accepted by almost all the philosophers across the culture, Eastern or Western, and everywhere we find that people accept it. Now, education could be a system or a tradition of teaching and learning, transfer of knowledge from one individual to another individual, from one community to another, from one generation to another. These are extended through time in which certain fundamental agreements are defined and redefined in terms of both internal and external debates. People either consciously adopt or uncritically accept the education of a particular tradition, or reflectively they have revised it or have made certain innovations in rare cases. Now, uh, education as a process, it goes on from generation to generation. And at every generation, we find that certain new uh, experiences of knowledge are added into it. So education is always a growing phenomenon. And from less perfect mode of education to a more perfect and still more and much more. But we cannot say that this is the final kind of education. Education and learning is sometimes, it's regarded as a lifetime adventure. It goes on the whole life. So it is an unending process kind of a thing. Now in education, we find that there are certain values which are involved in it. In fact, education itself is very normative in nature. It is also some kind of value on its own. So education not only molds the new generation, but reflects a society's fundamental assumptions about itself and the individual who compose of it. So with the mode of education, we can identify a particular society also, that what are their imaginations, aspirations, and everything else. So education, knowledge, and values are integrated and integral parts of human edification, wisdom, culture, and civilization. Education as a value has always been an important component of Indian tradition, and it can be comprised of beliefs, attitudes, and practices of the people. Now, the thing is that what are the basic questions, issues, and concerns which we have in education, particularly during modern times, uh, both in the West and also in India. So there are certain general questions which could be of great interest, with the help of which we can enter into the discussion of it. The first question is that what are the epistemological concerns of education lying in unfolding the ways and means of knowing? So that means the epistemological basis of education is something which needs to be spelled out first. Why and towards what aim one must educate? So education must be goal directed. So some kind of purposiveness has to be there in every mode of education. Uh, some kind of uddesha has to be there. Now, what could be the teaching and learning process? That is, how one educates the other who is being educated, or what is the relationship between the educator and the educated? That is, the questions regarding self, other, and intersubjectivity. So, what is the worth of education, and so on. So, when we enter in the classroom, so as a teacher, if we go there as a self, we find the student community as the other in the classroom. And with the interaction with the students, out of that interaction, some kind of, intersubjectivity emerges and starts developing. It is this intersubjectivity which is at the root of uh, educator and and the person who will be getting educated, that underlies. Now the third question is how to delineate the wholeness and the irreducibility of the knower and the learner, or as one can put it, in terms of self and the other engaged in an intersubjective relationship. So none of them can be reduced to one another. Knower is not reducible to the uh, person who has come to learn, and nor the learner can be reduced to the level of the knower. So they are irreducible on their own, but still there is some kind of a subjectivity which emerges, and it is that subjectivity which has to be articulated. And this is the way that Plato, in his book Republic and other such writings like Phaedo and other such places, has articulated it. And Rousseau, Kant, Hegel, Marx, and Indian tradition, Gandhi, Tagore, Vivekananda, and Sri Aurobindo. In the West, again, the John Dewey, Bouvert, and Ferre, Amartya Sen, and others have, you know, they've tried to answer these questions in one way or another. Now, when it comes to the areas in ethics or value-related issues, or education being some kind of a normative uh, discipline, then naturally the question arises that what kind of ethics we find in the field of education, or what does ethics and what are the kinds of ethics that we have before us. So in that case, we have got the descriptive ethics, which tells that what do people think on what is right. Normative or prescriptive ethics, that means how should people act. So what are those principles on the basis of which actions can be performed. Applied ethics, that means how do people take moral knowledge and put it into practice, action, follow oriented or result oriented kind of a thing. Meta ethics, like what does that term like being just, being good, etc., or the right, etc., mean? So this becomes the meta ethical questions. And in addition to the above, there are areas like moral psychology, machine ethics, military ethics, relational ethics, evolutionary ethics, medical ethics, professional ethics, so on and so forth. The first idea about the education and the value into it, we find in Plato, in his book Meno, that is a dialogue Meno, in which Socrates is trying to define learning as a recollection. So all sorts of learning is simply a kind of, remembering it, recollecting it. And the idea is that men generally used to forget. Animals don't forget. And that's why human beings, they write books. They have the laptops and, all sorts of things because we have very little memory. And, but the machine has much longer memory than what human beings have. So we are always required to be reminded of. So in the Meno, there is this kind of, the dialogue is there, and there are certain, illustrations of it. I cannot go into the details of it. So, but the incident is that there were a couple of people who were trying to solve certain mathematical puzzle, but they were not able to solve it. And there was one slave boy who was serving those people. He saw that puzzle and he could solve that problem. Then Socrates thought perhaps this slave boy in his past life was, some learned person. So he has just remembered it. So this is the way that the dialogue goes on. So knowledge, according to Socrates, resides in the soul, and the soul is immortal, and therefore knowledge is also something which is immortal. And the highest knowledge is regarded as the idea of good. Now in the West, during modern times, there was a very dramatic change which took place. And I would like to place some ideas of the Western model of education and Indian variant, that how Indian model of education differs from what we have in the West, and maybe some illustrations either from Tagore or Gandhi or Sri Aurobindo, Vivekananda, just to illustrate that position. But in the West, the thing started happening uh, with Immanuel Kant. He is the one who shifted the value discussions from the orientation towards good to the orientation towards right. In Greek philosophy, we find that goodness is the highest virtue, and everything has to be understood in terms of the idea of the good. But when modernity comes up, there that time we find that there was a substantive change, and there the idea of the good gets repudiated, and the questions of right start prevailing over it. So in Plato, the highest kind of knowledge is the knowledge of the idea of the good, which prevails over knowledge of one's own job or the knowledge of self-knowledge, etc. So three layers of knowledge which we find in Plato. First, that the person has the knowledge of what he is doing. That means the knowledge of his job. Second, that the person has the knowledge of himself, the self-knowledge. And the third, the knowledge of the idea of good. So, and these are in hierarchical order. Idea of good is the highest kind of a knowledge. And after that, we have the knowledge of the self. And finally, the knowledge which pertains to the knowledge of the kind of work we perform. However, in modernity, right started prevailing over the good, or the right is regarded as ethically and morally prior to the good. Man can become man by education, that is, education alone can accomplish the task of perfecting of man's nature. Man needs a reason of his own to develop his natural gifts and fulfillment of his destiny. In fact, Immanuel Kant has given certain examples in his brief article known as Theory and Practice, that, right has to be accepted. So what are the rights of the individuals? There is no justice beyond that right. Goodness can be something which can be ignored for the time, but the right is something which cannot be violated. This is the thing. So for Kant, the aim and objective of education is, in fact, he has divided it into three domains of knowledge, three domains, that is science, morals, and the art. These are the three domains in which human knowledge, human experience can be, understood. So it is in the realm of morality that Kant has regarded education as something in which right prevails over goodness, and that there is a dichotomy between what is and what ought to be. This dichotomy was there basically introduced by David Hume, and but the dichotomizing ability can be traced back to Aristotle's philosophy also. So that they first dichotomize and then try to philosophize. So Kant also has accepted the unbridgeable gulf between what is, what has been, and what will be, and what ought to be. This kind of thing. Though Kant has not developed a full-fledged system of education as has been done by his predecessors like Rousseau, yet education for him implies nurture, from nature to nurture. Education is a nurturing ability. And it requires a discipline and moral training. With discipline and moral training, we can nurture the person. For Kant, uh, education implies nurture, discipline, and moral training. These are the principles of human action, such as universality, end in itself, and kingdom of it. He has placed human reason and freedom as the central or the key terms to understand education. Education can alone accomplish the task of perfecting of man's nature. Man needs a reason of his own to develop his natural gifts and fulfillment of his destiny in terms of autonomy, dignity, tolerance, property, public and private spheres, which laid down the foundation of modernist educational system with democracy and secularism at its center. So these are, 6, 7 operative terms with the help of which we can understand the modernist education: democracy, secularization, public and private sphere, property, toleration, dignity, autonomy, freedom, etc., etc. But to achieve the destiny is no simple task. It is not the work of an individual alone, but that of the whole society and the state, which is secular. The fulfillment of destiny is a development not towards good, but of human rights. So in its entirety, education must aim the universal human rights for which man has also practical reason. Education should have moral training as its essential part. Now, this thing has been articulated by Immanuel Kant in his brief but a seminal article of just 7, 8 pages entitled as Answer to the Question, What is Enlightenment? 1784, this article was published, and it's available on the internet. One can download it and read it. It's a fascinating article. So English edition, English translations are, beautiful translations are available these days. So Kant says in the opening few lines of the answer to the question, what is enlightenment? He says, enlightenment is the coming out of man from his self-imposed immaturity. Immaturity is the incapacity to serve one's own understanding without direction from another. This immaturity is self-imposed. Reason itself languishes, not because it lacks understanding. What it lacks is resolution and courage. It is unwilling to serve itself. Take courage to serve your own understanding. So this, in fact, is the motto of the Enlightenment, that one needs to have courage. Uh, this means also that in the domain of knowing, feeling, and willing, human beings should not look for a mentor. That means you take your own decisions and you act on the basis of those decisions. And only then you are adult. Otherwise, humanity is languishing behind. It is immature in the sense of, being childish in nature. But when we arrive at, adulthood, that means we are able to make use of our reason substantially. One of his successors, Immanuel Kant's successors, Auguste Comte, a French philosopher and secretary of Saint-Simon, another thinker who advocated positivism. Auguste Comte is known as the father of sociology. He has also classified the development of human society under three stages: uh, theological stage, metaphysical stage, and the scientific stage. The idea of scientific stage as something which is adult and mature kind of a form is what he has borrowed from Immanuel Kant. Now, let me just outline some of the very basic features and of modernist education. So, before the Enlightenment came up, generally the integrating intellectual principle was the belief in God. But somehow, the synthesizing principle did not work with modern science and technology. So what Kant did, he divided human experience into three kinds, that is science, morals, and art. It has also created something like a distinction between fact and value, is and art, descriptive and prescriptive kind of issues, etc. Its implication is that science has no moral responsibility or that science is value neutral. So this has been questioned by the modernist thinkers at very many levels. So it has been reflected in the model of education being completely anthropocentric. That's why gender perspective is required to understand it. Otherwise, modernist education is precisely androcentric, anthropocentric, and discarding ecological and environmental issues in the whole of modernist education policy in the Europe. Now, the crisis which started in modernity in Europe, that crisis was, on the one hand, the modernist education created a self-centered individuals and secular neutrality to religious issues. The French Revolution had given the slogans like liberty, equality, and fraternity. So we got liberty and equality, but fraternity is something which was not at all available in the society. People thought that perhaps fraternity was rooted in the theological stage and religious or dharma kind of a thing. Alienation is something which is widespread in capitalist society at every level, and enlightenment was also regarded as something which is totalitarian in nature because they used reason to terrify others. And it's here that people started proposing that look, we live in the cosmos and not chaos, because modernist education policy is creating some kind of chaos in the society. And that chaos is at the inner level. People are feeling alienated in their own self, kind of a thing. They cannot live in harmony with their own ideas and everything else. And there is a social chaos where people experience inability to live in harmony with others. There is environmental crisis of depletion of ozone layer, global warming, etc., etc. That's why people are, not able to adjust with nature. And there's a metaphysical crisis also. Very substantially we find it. Now, it is at this stage that Indian model of education becomes something which is very important one in very many ways. In fact, when Gandhi came to India and he was asked by somebody that, Mr. Gandhi, what do you think of the Western education? He said that it is worth trying it at least once. That means there is some good point. You can try it for that, but finally you have to come back to Indian model of education and all that stuff. Now, what happens in Indian tradition? Uh, in the beginning itself, we find that there are two operative terms, Samhita and Mimamsa. Samhita means, you know, some kind of, uh, collection of ideas from diverse intellectual groups, and then there is a Mimamsa to articulate them, systematically. So with Samhita and Mimamsa, the distinction between norms and facts, rationalism and empiricism, theoretical reason and practical reason, etc., have been, you know, uh, resolved. Because in the West, people thought to philosophize on the basis of certain dichotomies, but in India, Samhita and Mimamsa show that there is no such dichotomy between them. The different mandalas of Riga Veda have been attributed to different schools and groups of individuals. Even Yajurveda is a Samhita, Charak is a Samhita. These are compilation of diverse views, plurality of views, diversity of ethnic groups. Pluralism is the act of philosophizing. This is very essentially Indian in nature, pluralism. So this ought to be assumed, otherwise we cannot explain Samhita. And these, there is a need to critically engage in this process and which we call as Mimamsa. And then we come across certain agreeable position. Now, the values which are defined as Mulya in Indian tradition, that means it is at the root of everything, Mula, kind of a thing. So, what is ordinarily said to be value in English parlance is Mulya, obtained from Mool, the root or the source. Things have their being potentially, and that is known as their dharma, kind of a thing. Even the basic elements of physical world is like water, fire, etc. have their swadharma or a mula dharma. Swadharma of heart is to, of heat is to burn, dahik sakti, to give heat or tapas, tap, etc. The mula dharma of human being is to be jyotirmaya, luminous, bright. Obviously, the fire world is something implied in. Education and knowing are moving to the sphere of light, leaving that of darkness or ignorance behind. Knowing is the tapasya for the life immortality beyond everything which is perishable and mortal. Education is not only truth seeking or value enterprise sadhana, but also an engagement with value realization. Now, in Indian tradition, integral approach has been adopted by many philosophers so far education is concerned. And that integral approach emerges because there is no cognitive dualism in Indian tradition. And that has facilitated India to develop some kind of integral approach. Learning and education was a journey from disease to well-being, from darkness to light, from ephemeral to the durable, from the perishable to the imperishable. Indian traditional learning was elucidative, educative, evocative, and inspirational. It had enlightenment, attainment, and accomplishment. Education has edification much more than erudition. As a matter of fact, learning is a delightful adventure into the world of ideas and ideals. Learning is an elevating process of self transformation. The learned is enlightened in thought and actions, in attitudes and dispositions, full of love for all, everything, and being of this seamless universe. Now, given this kind of a phenomenon, now there are various levels of, what is called the challenges and apprehensions which started coming up gradually.